The simple fact is you are a digital CEO. Whether you're an entrepreneur, intrapreneur, or just an employee in any other organization, even a customer. And so we're going to walk through what it means to be the CEO of your life in this digital landscape that we are now all in, whether we love it or not. So Dennis, what is a CEO and what are the jobs of a CEO?
A CEO is responsible for the business side. So you as a digital CEO may think that you have to learn digital marketing skills, which you do. But there's the business of digital, which is the marketing, operations, and finance. It's you working on your business instead of in your business. And most people as individual contributors, as a specialist in video or SEO or PPC or whatever it is that you're a specialist in a particular skill or set of tools, often forget about the business side. So as a digital CEO, we're going to equip you with the particular skills you need to be able to scale your business so your business can operate without you there at every point.
And in each episode, you'll find it is more like a tutorial walking you through either tactics or techniques that you can use from a business strategy standpoint, a marketing in terms of digital or physical in person, operational like personal efficiency, or business project management and finance of how to properly allocate sources through metrics, analysis, action. One of the principles we'll actually cover in this.
And you're going to find that as a digital CEO, you'll have to combine people, process, and platform. And most people will gravitate to the one that they're most comfortable with, such as networking because of the people, or process, which is usually the piece that's missing in terms of SOPs and checklists. And the one that people really fall down on is the software, the platform. They get enamored with a particular tool or a particular technique or fad, and then they realize that they don't have a business, they have the implementation of a particular feature. So us as digital CEOs are driving revenue. We're driving results, and we're going to show you how to do this step by step through our own example and other people that we interview.
And so some backstory is, my name is Tristan Parmalee. I am one of the co-founders of Chiro Revenue. We are a digital marketing agency that serves chiropractors, and in a way, I'm a CEO in training. While I am the CEO of our company and I'm learning, I get to learn by our co-host, who is personally mentoring me and walking me through the processes that it takes to build a company for thousands of employees, thousands of clients to have. Because our goal and mission, and I think our measuring stick for a successful business, is how many employees you can maintain, because that means you've got cash flow. That means you've got a great product, a great service. And if you look at some of the most impactful companies in the world, the one thing that they have in common is that they're always hiring. They're always creating great entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and customers.
And when you're growing, that's how you create opportunity to get the best people to work for you. If your company is not growing, you're not creating upward mobility and growth that's going to attract the best people. So you have to grow to be able to get the best people and to be able to seize these opportunities, because if you don't have the best people, no amount of process or training or tools is going to overcome that. So we're going to show you how do you become a market leader. And like Tristan said, you need to develop a team and start to grow that team. Not because you're trying to build an empire of hundreds of employees, but because you need to scale so that you're not the one having to be involved in the operations. The bigger impact you make is going to be based on combining people, process, and platform. And to get more and more people involved, think about what is involved in terms of workflow, in terms of training, in terms of how you recruit people. How many people do you know that declare themselves the CEO of a company and it's just them? What's the difference between a business owner and a CEO? A CEO has functions, operations, teams, processes, revenue, and they're also respected. So let's talk about what that means in detail.
So let's dive in to the three topics we're going to cover today. Very brief, very simple. We're fortunate to have a co-host at Dennis who's going to have different tactics and depths at length for us to explain. But I think we should just summarize one tip of marketing, one tip of operations, and one tip of finance so we can give our first-time listeners, new discoveries, an action item, something that they can put in practice. So what would you say your one tip or one technique, your one piece of marketing is.
Marketing is getting your customers to do the work for you. So it's word of mouth. And as a digital CEO, you have to create processes to be able to make that happen. I was lucky to be mentored by Al Casey, who was the CEO of American Airlines, and he had 100,000 employees. You can imagine the kind of process that's behind that. And the marketing that we had with our 5,000 employees was about collecting the feedback from the customers so that we could leverage word of mouth, because people would say, I had a great trip to Cancun on American Airlines. Think about what's necessary to collect that feedback at the gate or at the hotel or through the internet or through customer letters, and turning that into the marketing machine. Being able to distribute that in brochures, in the monthly newsletters that shows your advantage balance, into all aspects of operations, right? Website, mobile app, all these other pieces. Think about how you can leverage what other people are saying about you. Team members, customers, partners, people who don't even work with your company in any official capacity. That's the number one overarching tip for marketing.
And I remember actually watching Dennis on stage. I think it was maybe almost 5 or 6 months ago now. The one note, the single biggest note that I wrote down is that Dennis allows his customers and the audience to speak for him. And I was watching that at length, and I was mind blown by it that you actually put it in practice. And I'm excited that we're going to be able to unpack that in some of these episodes of how to get that viral word of mouth and to be able to track it now, because we're in that digital world. And that's the most amazing blessing that you have, because imagine if you sold a product 50 years ago and no one was able to talk about it. Now you've got Facebook reviews, you've got Google reviews, you've got local listings and Google My Business and online listings, you've got forums and Quora and Twitter. And that's what we're going to be able to unpack on marketing. And I think there's no better teacher of that, following, learn, do, teach, than Dennis. So operations, the function. Things have to get done at a personal level, at a company level. They have to get done within teams of teams. And they also have to get done not only for customers, but sometimes with customers. If you're an agency owner or you're a service professional, your results are equally driven by the participation of you and the customer. And you have to be in this perfect ebb and flow. So there's so many different operational hacks, right? There's all these different ways to project manage and all these different tools and tactics for efficiency. What is your biggest takeaway for operations that we can lead with?
Independent of the tools, because people focus on Basecamp, Monday, Slack, whatever their favorite tool is, and they forget that what's more important is the process behind the tool. So think about what happens in your customer process before, during, and after the customer makes the purchase. Before is marketing. That's how you get them in. During is your onboarding. What happens when the customer first buys? It doesn't matter if it's e-commerce or a service business. There is an experience that people get as part of onboarding and becoming a customer. And once they become a customer, after, how do you solicit feedback? How do you build it into your operation so that your people are collecting feedback from customers, positive and negative, learning using the exact words that your customers use? And think about the process to be able to transcribe, record Zoom videos, asking them how they're doing, so that then feeds the marketing machine. So think about before, during, and after. And a lot of people, I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of entrepreneurs where it's just them. And they're growing a business. And they don't have the resources, they say, to hire all these people. Their business isn't that big. And I've talked to people who have multi-billion-dollar businesses that they started. And wow, what do you learn between the difference between those people? Because everyone had to start from nothing at some point. All big businesses at one point were tiny businesses.
In the garage, in the back of the car, whatever.
And this is what I want you to learn. Even if you have a tiny business, you still need to think about what the pathway is to be able to get to 10 people, or get to 100 customers, or get to 100 people and 1,000 customers, and whatever the ratio is that you need. And that's going to be your operations process. Whatever you document as part of what happens to be able to get the customer, to be able to set up the customer and onboard and welcome them so they understand what you're about and they understand what your products and services are about and understand the value. And afterwards, ongoing lifetime value, retention, customer feedback, referrals. Document what happens in those three components. Do not assume that your team members understand what to do. You're going to have to download those things that are in your head and get them into training. I've talked to so many entrepreneurs that say, yep, I've definitely recorded that. I've trained people.
I'm at 80%.
Do not train people one-on-one. Train people so that the intent is that other people can watch it. Ideally, train 3+ people live at the same time, whether it's a virtual assistant or team members that you have working full-time. The way that you're going to be able to scale beyond yourself is through learn, do, teach. You've done it yourself. You've documented how it's working. Other people can then follow your recipe. You keep tuning that recipe, and you send new people through the training instead of giving them one-on-one mentoring, because the more one-on-one mentoring you give them, like we saw tonight, the less likely they're going to go through your training, because they know that you'll one-on-one mentor them.
Exactly. And so when you're looking to scale as a digital CEO in your personal efficiency, this could be with your family and the systems that you use inside of the home. We're systemizing everything. This, as an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, as a number 2 or 3 or 4 within a company, you're constantly going to be looking up and down the chain of command, whether it be decentralized or meshed together in groups. And you're going to be able to audit process constantly to say, what is the way? And the way is whatever's working the most, whatever's working the best. We're going to take that, we're going to double down on it and make it better. And that's going to feed your marketing machine, but it's also going to feed our third point, which is finance. And before we go into that, I want to say that I was a struggling business owner for 4 years as an agency owner. I was a struggling agency owner. And this isn't just a show for agency owners, although they will get a lot of benefit from us going through all these tutorials. And what I found was, after years and years of struggling and going through Dennis's training, is that systems and processes, a quote I heard from Sean Deal's podcast, is that people get tired, systems don't. And I was getting exhausted and burnt out every year. My teammates were exhausted and burnt out. Even some of my clients were exhausted and burnt out. And it all came down to having the right systems. And so we're going to talk about that with operations as we go through each episode.
I want you to think about operations as repeatable excellence. That means you can scale it through a process, through people. If one person doesn't do their job, what happens to your company? Think about each function in your company, and is it tied to a particular person? And what if that person doesn't show up for a week for whatever reason? What would happen to your company? Always have a backup. Always have your work so that it's done by a function, by a role, and not by a person. And then you put people into those roles. That might mean you need more people involved than you have right now, but start thinking about that, because I learned in the airline business from the CEO of American Airlines, we had 2,200 flights a day. Can you imagine that? And there were weather problems, flight attendants called in sick, there were delays that were caused by ground or other things, there were strikes, fuel prices went up, equipment would fail, and we had backups for everything. And so we call this graceful failure. The idea is that we expect there to be failure, not because we're pessimistic, but we know things go wrong. And when something goes wrong, which it will, you have a backup plan. You have a backup person. You have a process to be able to handle it. What happens if your landing gear doesn't work? What happens if you're out of fuel? What happens if you have a weather pattern that causes you to circle for another hour and you might not have enough fuel? You have to anticipate those issues. And the easiest thing is look at where you've had challenges in your business. Anything that, the biggest complaint I hear from other business owners, whether they're digital CEOs or they own factories, is that people don't care. The entrepreneur, the business owner says, my employees don't care. I have to motivate them. I have to think for them. I have to give them permission to take action. You're going to hear that too. You're never going to turn an employee into an entrepreneur who cares about your business as much as you. So you're going to have to lean on managers, on process, on other things to keep your business accountable, so that if one person fails, your entire business doesn't go down.
And as an entrepreneur and a great employee who cares about the company or the vision, sometimes there's a disconnect between leadership, between the ownership. And this will be the same tools and same tips to be able to help the entrepreneurs scale as they go.
You want to move up? You can lead at any part of the company.
Exactly.
When I started American Airlines, I started at the very bottom. And I learned how to take care, how to lead, even though I had people that were above me, right? So you can always advance. Whether you're working for somebody, that's great. If it's a great boss or not such a good boss, you can always advance if you apply these same principles as an entrepreneur who's someone that's inside a company. You can lead at any point, because the idea of a CEO, a chief executive officer, executive means execute, to get something done. If you can get stuff done and build a process where there isn't a process, because maybe your boss doesn't know, you're going to get promoted. You're going to be able to prove your value. You're going to make more money.
Exactly. So we've covered marketing. We've touched on operations as well. And of course, these would be things we dive deep into over the next several months, maybe years to come. So the last thing would be finance, marketing, operations, finance. And when I think of finance, and I know you've got a lot, don't you have a degree from the London School of Economics?
I have a degree in finance.
Yeah. So that just so happens to be from an internationally acclaimed college. But anyways, when I think of finance, I don't just think of the P&L. I think of the revenue and business goals that are set, and whether or not, or what contributing factors are going to take or add to the accomplishment of that goal. And that is something that luckily I was able to evaluate, to look at our finances as we would go, when I had absolutely no idea what I was doing and no guidance over the past 4 years, 5 years. And so as somebody who's not only done it within a company, but done it as your own company and as an owner, as an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur, and somebody who's now helped thousands of clients and companies run their finance, what would you say is the number one tip or a way of thinking about finance?
I have a finance degree, and I've looked at businesses that make nothing, that have just started. So don't think this doesn't apply to you. And businesses that do billions, with the founders that started from nothing. And here's the thing you need to know about finance. Don't run out of money. Okay? What's the difference between accounting and finance?
Is accounting tracking the money that you've already spent, and finance is planning how you're going to spend it?
That's right. So accounting is looking in the rear view mirror. It's looking backwards in time. It's counting. That's why it's accounting. You're literally counting. And finance is looking forward. So you're planning. You're looking at what your headcount needs are. You're looking at where you expect your customer growth to go. And because you're looking and measuring, because accounting is more than the money measuring, you're measuring everything, because the measurement of your cost of acquisition, the measurement of your marketing effectiveness, the measurement of what it costs for you to deliver your products and services tie directly into your profitability, which gives you margin to reinvest into building software, into doing marketing, into doing all kinds of things where you might want to expand, right? So think of finance as actually strategic planning. And it's an extension of any kind of reporting or process that you have, because if you have good operations that's documented, you can measure every point of your operations. You can measure your task level efficiency. How long does it take to do a task? That's a finance thing. You can measure what's it cost to do a task. You can measure what it costs to what you charge for the product versus what it costs you to actually deliver it, which is your cost of goods sold. And when you understand the difference between what it's worth to a customer or client versus what it costs you to deliver, that difference is the margin, and you want to have your price high enough that you're able to make some money, but not so high that it's above what it's worth to the client. And finance is about determining that, and marketing is about finding the people. Then there's always people who will pay a premium. And the thing that I tell entrepreneurs, especially agency owners, is double your prices, because you will find people who will pay twice the price, and it is worth that to them, which allows you to invest more and deliver more and have greater margin and have happier customers and do half as much work for the same amount of money.
And as entrepreneurs, as family members, as people, you can always look at exchange money and time and looking at how you're investing that as well for a return on what you're looking to accomplish, whether it be your personal goals like your fitness, or it be your family goals, like what you want to achieve as a unit, or it just be within your job of the tasks that you're not only being paid to do, but how you're going the extra mile to increase those operations to move your way up. And what is going to be the best allocation of that resource or time, but whether it be the resource of money or the resource of time. And I love that. I think we'd about wrap it up with, if we've covered marketing, operations, and finance, a single action item, a single piece of homework, the one litmus test of understanding that we could give to the entrepreneur, and any other service professional or owner who's able to become that digital CEO and step into that area and own it. What is the number one action item to kick it off and to get started?
I want you guys to write down your XYZ. Let me explain. Even if you are a part-time moonlighting, trying to start up your digital e-commerce, whatever thing on the side while you work a full-time job, or you're already a successful entrepreneur, you have 100 employees, you have to be clear on your value proposition, which is I help X achieve Y via Z. So I help X. Who's my target? Who is it that I'm helping exactly? Not small business owners. That's too broad. Let's be real specific, like chiropractors for chiro revenue, right? Achieve Y. What's the goal? What's that worth? That goes back to the finance piece, right? I need to be able to value what it is that I do. Through Z, which is looking at what I do, and what you do has a cost component. So if you understand marketing, operations, and finance, you understand what it takes to get that customer. If you understand the customer and what they believe in and what their pain points are, you're already halfway towards being able to sell the product. Operations is delivering against the promise of marketing. Finance is tracking the efficiency and being able to let the machine run. So if you have your XYZ very clear about your value proposition to who, what it costs them, and what it costs you to deliver, you're well on your way to tying yourself together as a digital CEO where you have the machinery of your business operating instead of you having to do all the work yourself.
And so this is the Digital CEO podcast. And in here, we're going to wrap up all of the tutorials. Consider them trainings. Consider every single episode, recording, and video that you see come from Dennis and myself to be step-by-step guides to achieving a specific goal. And today is about stepping into that role as a digital CEO and owning it. Because whether you're a chiropractor even, or you're a marketer like myself, or you do the analytics for a search engine at Yahoo like Dennis did back in the day as an entrepreneur. No matter where you are in your journey, maybe you're just getting started, maybe you're driving for Uber, I've done that in the past as well, and you're listening right now. You're a digital CEO because the tools, the tactics are only going to become more technical. They are only going to become more digital. And when you step into that ownership and you step into that role, you'll start to find that it's a lot easier than you think to make the right moves, to do the right things, to own your own results. And that's ultimately what being a CEO is about, is being fully in control and fully in ownership of the results that you provide for yourself, for other people, and the people you've been called to serve. And our mission is to create as many jobs as possible for entrepreneurs and as many businesses as possible for entrepreneurs. And so these trainings, tutorials, and walkthroughs are designed specifically to bring those two types of people together. So we hope you found a ton of value in this first episode. Dennis, do you have anything to close it out?
As a digital CEO, think about what it means to create value even once. If you have not sold anything, sell it once. It could be consulting. Maybe you don't have a product, sell service or consulting around that. And when you've documented how that's been done, think about how you can teach other people to do the same thing. Think about how you can scale that out. And when you start thinking this way about people, process, and platform to scale something that you have done, you are well on your way to becoming a digital CEO. And to have the patience to know that sometimes it might take months or years to be able to scale something out, and it takes perseverance. And one of my mentors said that success is merely not quitting. If you don't quit, you win. And I see so many entrepreneurs struggle and they give up just as compound interest in the asymptote starts to take them up. Because initially, the first 6 months, 12 months, it might not look like much progress. And then the curve starts to hit, which is compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world, said Albert Einstein. So I want you to think about how people, process, and platform, marketing, operations, and finance, all the components that we're talking about apply to your business. And we want to help you every step of the way through what we have done, not just through an opinion, and through what others have done that we're interviewing. And we're glad that you're joining us for the Digital CEO podcast.
So our next episode is what is delegating and how not to screw it up. As a CEO, it might be one of the most critical things that you learn. We'll see you in episode 2. Thanks, guys. Cool. What'd you
Good.
think?
That's pretty good.
Solid?
Yeah.
Ended up being like 20 minutes, which is
That's fine.
kind of what we were going for. Can we go ahead and stop that too?
Yeah.
So that way it's separate. And then I'll go ahead and stop the Zoom as well.